today, right, I'm going to show you all two different types of macaron shells. Because in the earlier stage, right, we are discussing to make a pastry with macarons, ispahan. But afterwards, because a lot of people request and asking how to do a macarons from French and Italian meringue, then we decide to change from a topic of ispahan right now. I'm going to change to only doing the macaron shell for French meringue base, and another one is Italian meringue base. So I will finish the demo first. Afterwards, right, I will open a session for 5 to 10 minutes about the discussion. Or if you have any question or whatever, right, you can ask on the time. In the middle of making, right, because normally I will be quite concentrated. If you ask some question, I might miss out. So try to ask it in the last discussion time. I think it's better. And we are going to have two recipes. So one of it, right, will be French meringue macarons. Another one will be Italian meringue macarons. The only difference is the preparing method. The ingredients are almost exactly same. Just for the Italian meringue, right, we have a water because we have to cook the syrup. Okay. Actually, the recipe is exactly same with what you are seeing in our Upper Chef online. It's exactly same. Because in our school, right, we are using only these two recipes. So let me check the time. Okay, I'm not going to wait anymore. We are going to start right away. So I will start first with the French meringue recipe. For the French meringue recipe, I'm using I follow the recipe. I'm using the cocoa powder base. So if you don't want to use cocoa powder, you want to have a plain one, you just replace the amount of cocoa powder, replace back with the almond powder. You skip this, but you have to replace back the amount because originally, right, the amount of the cocoa powder is actually the almond powder. I switched to cocoa powder so we get the cocoa flavor. So today, if you want to do green tea or whatever other flavors, right, in the powder form, you can just replace it with cocoa powder. But you have to be careful. If you are using green tea, right, I would suggest to change half of the cocoa powder to green tea. The other half you use back almond powder because the flavor is very strong. So I'm going to start. For the French meringue macarons, right, it's very simple. First, we are going to make a meringue. Over here, I would suggest to use the aged egg white. If you are doing a macarons, right, I will always suggest to use the aged egg white because it's easier to whip up the meringue. They will be more stable. If you have a fresh egg white, I would suggest to do it with an Italian meringue recipe. It's safer because the meringue are more stable. So I put the egg white inside the bowl. And the sugar I'm going to keep aside. And while waiting, right, I'm going to blend the almond powder, cocoa powder, and icing sugar together. Over here, I have a RoboCook. It's a machine which is heavy duty and they mix very fast, the food processor. So if you're using a RoboCook like me, I'm going to just blend very short time. In between 10 to 20 seconds is enough. But if you have a normal food processor, right, you can blend a little bit longer. But do not blend until it's hot, as we want it to keep as powder form. We don't want it to become a paste. If it becomes a paste, right, you will see your macarons, it won't work because the fat from the almond will come out. So I put icing sugar, almond powder, and cocoa powder inside the RoboCook or food processor. Then I'm going to blend it. Okay, help me to on the. Okay, so I'm going to blend just 10 to 20 seconds. The reason I do this, right, is after I mix well, it's easier for me to mix together with a meringue. And second part, right, the almond powder I get usually is a little bit rough. So by blending like this way, right, we can get the almond powder more fine. So it's done. So as you can see, over here, right, I get a mixture of cocoa powder, icing sugar, and almond powder. Like this case, right, if you are blending nicely, we don't need to sift. We can use it right away. It's very important. Because if the reason we do like this, right, is to make sure the surface is smooth. If you don't do this, you can get the macarons also, but usually you see your surface, right, of the macaron is a little bit rough because your almond powder is a little bit more rough. And now I'm going to start the meringue. So to start with the French meringue, right, we will start with just egg white by medium speed. Whip it until it's foamy. For this part, it's very important when you do the meringue because for doing a nice macarons, right, if you don't want it to be hollow, and second thing, if you want the edges to look nice, right, the meringue plays a crucial part. If you don't do the meringue nicely, right, you don't get the macaron nice at the outlook and also the inner part. So first, when I whip until it's foamy, I'm gonna add in the sugar slowly. I saw in the topic, right, a lot of people asking inside the Facebook about the time on beating the meringue or time to bake, right? I would say if you're using a different mixer with me, right, the timing is different. So it's more ideal you check on the texture instead of the time. And now we are going to whip until it's firm thick, but do not bake until it's dry. Because if you bake until it's dry, right, when we fold, they are going to collapse faster. As you can see, I put in the sugar gradually. I don't pour everything one time. As you can see, the speed I'm using, right, is not too fast, medium speed. If you have 1 to 10, right, use around 5 to 6, okay? All right, so we are going to check the texture. As you can see now, it's still a little bit soft. So I'm gonna beat it for a little bit longer. See, we got a peak, but still a little bit soft. This one is close to medium peak, okay? I'm gonna beat a little bit longer to make it firmer. As you can see now, the peak is more straight. So it reaches firm peak, it doesn't move. Do not beat too much. If you start to see your meringue is dry, right? On that case, it's not too good for your macarons because you will get a nice shape. Usually the middle part will have a big hole. So after it's done, now I'm gonna mix the powder into the egg whites. Do not put the egg whites into the powder because if you put just one part of egg white, right, they are going to dry up. So it's very difficult. We are going to collect the egg whites. So it's better to mix. Normally I divide to 3 parts. I will pour the first part of the powder mixture and I fold nicely. For Italian meringue base, right, you have to be a little bit more careful. Otherwise, right, we're going to collapse easily. So after mix out the first part, second part of the powder, and on this stage, right, the reason we call it as macarons, right, because in French, this method we call it as macaroni. That's why the cookies, right, we call it as the macarons. It's named after the method. As you can see right now, my mixture is still very fluffy. You see, it holds the shape. It's not collapsing yet. And when it's roughly mixed out, I pour the third part again. Same way, hold it nicely. So after mix all right, we have to check the texture. So you see it's cracking, right? The mixture is cracking, means they are still a little bit too fluffy. We have to collapse it. To collapse it, right, we have to press it. Mix a little bit more. So you see the mixture. Now as you see, the mixture are more fluid. And when you drop, right, it's sharp. It's not going to cracking a lot. And if you see the inner part, the mixture slowly flow back to flat. So I'm going to show you one more time. When you press, right, just press like this. Okay? But now I'm already reached close to the texture that I need, so I don't want to mix too much. I'm going to just show you the texture that I want to have. So you can see it drop smooth and the mixture becomes shining and it's already flow back to become flat. This is the texture that we want. Now I'm going to transfer to a piping bag and pipe it on the tray. Then help me to clean the I don't need to wash, just wipe it. So over here, I prepare a steel pad. It's okay to use a steel pad, and it's okay to use perforated silicone mat, the one with hole or steel pan, or it's okay to use parchment paper or teflon paper. It doesn't really matter. But if your oven, because all of this, right, it depends on the oven. If your oven heat is not so stable, I would suggest us to use a teflon paper because teflon paper are thin, so it contact with the tray more. The heat you are not going to lose so fast. For both perforated and the steel pad, right, both work nicely. with a convection oven that we normally have. So I'm not worried for using either one. And now I'm gonna pipe to a normal size. So I'm gonna pipe around 3 to 4 centimeters, then cut. Afterward, it's going to grow a little bit more inside the oven. As you can see, when I pipe right, the mixture are going to slowly fall down and become flat. If you are not mixing enough right, the mixture are not possible to become flat by itself. So if you see after you pipe, the mixture are not going to flow back, become flat, right? You have to mix a little bit more. But if you see your mixture is become flat too fast, too soon, means your mixture is overmixed. If you overmix right, you cannot do anything. If you undermix it, there's a chance you can mix a little bit more to save it. But overmix right, the macarons are not going to be nice. So the first half, I'm going to show the nice one. The second half, right, I'm going to show if I overmix what will happen. So I will take back the mixture. I'm going to collapse it to show you. Because a lot of you are asking me through the Facebook, how come sometimes you look like wet in the middle because you are overmixing it. So now I cut out everything. The mixture I have earlier, right? Okay. Now I'm gonna mix it a little bit more to collapse it. So you see now, the mixture becomes super runny. I will show you one more time. You can see the mixture very, very runny. So this one, right, when you pipe on the steel pad or even silicone mat or parchment paper, they are not going to hold the shape. When you pipe, they are going to expand and becomes very big. So you cannot keep the shape. And also, later after we bake, right, because they are compact, so it's difficult to bake until it's fully cooked. And also, you don't get a texture that outside is crispy, inside is chewy, because they are very dense. So on one tray later, we can see the difference between two. And another thing, the volume, right, is going to be very less also. So now I'm going to pipe the overmixed one. So it almost looks the same, but first thing you can see the color, this is a little bit stronger and they are a little bit more flat because they expand more. So as you can see, for the earlier one, it holds the shape a little bit by itself. But the second one, because overmixed already, they doesn't hold the shape, they expand a lot. So it becomes very big and very flat. And now I'm going to tap a little bit to remove an air bubble on the surface. So when you tap right, do not throw like this to tap. Tap like this. So it's easy to remove the air bubble. Like this is okay. So you can see the difference for both. This one stronger color, I don't change the recipe just because the air is lesser, so the color becomes stronger because it's more compact. The first one, the ideal way how we do that, normally the color is a bit lighter. And now I'm going to leave a macaron for around 15 minutes in the room. It depends on the environment because if you are starting with air condition, in Malaysia, the air condition we have right, it will make the room dry. So they are going to dry faster. So usually 15 minutes is enough. As long as when you touch it, it's not sticking to your hand, you can put inside the oven. If you are in the raining season, then you will find, you will see the time, it will take longer time to get dry. Usually, if it's raining times, right, sometimes I have to wait around 1 hour. So it really depends on the environment. So I'm going to keep it aside. And now I'm going to start the Italian meringue-based macarons. The idea for both, right, to understand the macarons are very similar. The very important part is the meringue. You have to do it nicely. You have to whip until firm thick, but do not overwhip. Overwhip, right, when you fold, they are going to collapse faster. You will get like the second batch that I show you, you are going to get a collapse one easier. Then for Italian, also the same thing. But for Italian, the good thing is the meringue are much more stable. That's why it's easier. So over here, I have the ingredients. Egg whites. For the Italian one, I'm gonna show you the plain one. So water and sugar is for cooking the inside the pot to make a syrup, and egg white. One part is to make the meringue. Then the other part, right, I'm going to put inside the bowl later to mix together with the almonds. So the first part, same thing. I'm going to put the equal amounts of almond powder and icing sugar in the blender or food processor to blend it nicely. Same reason, we have to make it very smooth. So if you blend with a food processor, same thing, you don't need to sieve. If any of you don't have a food processor at home, what you can do is you take the sieve, you sieve out the almond powder also to take out the bigger pieces of almond powder. So you will get the nice surface of the macarons. Then the slightly bigger one, right, in the future you can use for the sponges. So you will get the smooth macarons also. Same way, blend with 10 to 20 seconds to make it smooth. So after it's done, so you will see, I get the powder, almond powder and sugar, which is very fine. All right. Then the other side, now I'm going to start the Italian meringue. Must help me to clear this one. Thank you. For the egg white, same way. If you are doing an Italian meringue, right, try to start egg white and the syrup almost the same time. Because when the syrup reach a temperature, right, because now I'm going to cook to 120 degrees. Once it reach 120 degrees, right, we are going to pour into the egg white right away. But when we pour, right, if your egg white is not beaten up, there's a huge chance we are going to overcook the egg white. So you have to make sure you start the egg white with a medium speed. Let it raise up a little bit. What happened? Okay. And I'm gonna start the syrup the same time. So the syrup, right, start with the medium low heat. And do not stir too much. If you stir a lot, right, the fat will get crystallized, and you will see your syrup are going to crystallize easily. Just mix it a little bit. Then just leave it and let it boil up. And it's really important we use a thermometer to check the temperature. We have to cook to 120 degrees. And if you want to add any color towards your macarons, I would suggest to add inside the syrup right now. Because if your color is in the liquid form, we can evaporate the excess liquid right now. I don't like to add the color inside my almond paste because if I'm using the powder color is fine. But if I'm using the liquid colors, right, I'm going to add on extra humidity inside my macarons mixture. You will see like this way, right? Later when we've done the macarons, right, they are going to be a little bit runny. So I would suggest to put the colors inside the syrup. You cook together is better. So now by using a medium low heat, continue to cook to 120 degrees. Let it take a bit longer time to cook so you can melt the sugar nicely. If I'm using a high heat, right, usually the liquid evaporates too fast. The syrup are going to be dries up very fast. So your sugar will get crystallized before it get fully dissolved. And then 19. Okay, 120. So I'm gonna remove the syrup. And as you can see, my meringue right already raised out a little bit. Make sure pour from the side into the bowl. Do not pour it on the middle because I don't want to contact with the whisk. So at this way, you see, we don't get a lot of crystal inside our pot. And now, by using a medium high speed, we are going to beat until you reach a firm peak, or beat until it cools down to below 40 degrees Celsius. Recipe 哪里找 Recipe, you just look at our basic French pastry, you will get the recipe for the French meringue based macarons. And if you check on the basic cookies, you will see the Italian meringue based macarons. So while waiting for the meringue to raise up and cool down, now I'm gonna mix the egg whites into the mixture of almond powder and icing sugar. Just mix it well to make an almond paste. Just to combine it nicely. And now we have to wait for the meringue to raise up. And guys, the recipe I wrote down on the whiteboard, right, is already almost the minimum. It's very difficult for you if you want to go for lesser amount than what I'm doing, because it's very difficult for you to fold and mix well everything. They are going to collapse very easily. Because I tried many times, I think this is already the smallest batch that we can do. If you do a smaller batch than this, usually when you do folding, right, you are going to collect more. Then right now, by using a medium high speed, I'm going to continue whip until it starts to cool down. Give me the infrared thermometer. So I'm gonna check the temperature to make sure it cool down. So right now it's around 36, 35. I'm gonna be a little bit more. Now temperature reach below 40, but the meringue haven't really raised up to the texture that I want. I'm gonna be a little bit more. We can show the back. So while waiting for the Italian meringue based macarons, right, as you can see now, for the French one, when I touch, it's not sticking to the hand anymore. See? So we can bake this. And I suggest, guys, if you are doing your home, if your tray is not heavy enough or not thick enough, what you can do, you can put two trays together. Because if you are using a convection oven, right, sometimes the heat, they are translating like this way. So when you reach to a temperature that you set, normally it will stop by itself. They won't increase the heat anymore. At that time, sometimes the temperature will drop a little bit. So your macarons sometimes when you bake, right, you see some part is very nice, some part is not as nice. By putting two trays together, you can avoid that because you have a thicker and more heavier tray. They can trap the heat nicer. So like this way, right, you make it more stable for the whole tray. I'm gonna place it inside the oven. So now I'm gonna leave the meringue to beat by itself with a low speed. When I come back, it's supposed to be done. So for the temperature, I set 155 because I understand my oven. If I set 160, right, it's a bit tricky. There's a chance that the macarons are going to crack. So 155 would be good for this. For this size, we have to bake around 12 minutes. But usually I will set around 10 to 11 minutes. Then after that, I'm gonna rotate the oven and bake again. And if your oven are same like me, can have a ventilation system, you close the ventilation so it can help to push the macaron to raise up. So I will start 7 minutes with a ventilation in. Means they are making airtight. Whatever steam they will trap inside. So when it's 7 minutes, right, I'm gonna pull out the ventilation, continue bake until you reach 12 minutes. Then after that, I'm gonna open the door, turn the tray back for 1 more minute. So altogether it's between 13 minutes to 14 minutes. For this size, bigger size you have to bake for longer time. For the question later I explain. I think it's easier. Just to let you know, if you're at home, right, you don't have a ventilation system, you just bake like this, no problem. You don't need to. You can skip up the part that I mentioned because with the equipment that you have, right, you can push the product quality to certain limit. If you want to be better, you have to get the equipment that better than what you have right now. So later we can discuss about it to understand more about ventilation. But now let me finish the Italian meringue base first. As you can see, we get a peak, straight, no moving. Now I'm gonna fold into the almond paste. So over here I have an almond paste, right? I will take half of the meringue into the almond paste first to mix well. Then mix the second half. For Italian meringue, because it's more stable, right? So you can press. You don't need to fold carefully in the beginning. It's easier because it's more stable. But be careful to not whip over. If you whip over, right, the meringue are going to dry. Same thing later, the macarons after you bake, right, the shape are not going to be very nice. I know after that we can collapse it, but it's very difficult to control the texture. And also, usually when you bake, right, the macarons middle, right, will get a big hole. If you want to avoid that, because sometimes, right, it's normal to get a small or just a little bit hollow, but if you overmix it or you will overmix your meringue, right, you can get the hollow is very big. You only get the two shells, but the middle is empty. If you want to avoid that, your meringue have to take care of nicely. So I mix well the almond paste with the meringue for the first batch. Do not worry, later I will answer you the question. Let me finish all this first. Then the second batch of the meringue. The reason I do like this, right, is to make sure I don't collect all the meringue at one time. So it's safer. So second part, folding nicely. And if you want to do a white color macarons, right, I would suggest to use the Italian meringue base. The color is more whitish because your meringue is more stable. There's more air inside, so the color will be whiter. If you are using a French, normally it's very difficult to get a very white color. So right now, after we mix all right, you see the texture. When you drop right, you see it's not dropping sharp, it's cracking a little bit. Same way, I have to collapse it. As you can see, for Italian, it's taking more time to collapse it. So I'm going to collapse a bit more. So right now you see the mixture is falling down smoother. It's not cracking, it's sharp. And you see the mixture, right, it's shining. And when the mixture fall down, right, it will slowly become flat. They are not going to get a peak. So this is the texture that we want. I'll show you one more time. As you can see, it drops sharp. Okay. Now I'm going to transfer inside a piping bag. For this one, I'm going to show you with a different mat. I'm going to use a steel pan or perforated mat. It works the same for me. But if possible, I prefer to choose a steel pad if compared to the perforated, because I find it heat translating with a steel pad, it can help to trap more the heat more even. But afterwards, it doesn't have too much difference with the design and the shape in the end. So as you can see, when I pipe after sometimes, right, it becomes flat. It's not like this. So this one I'm not going to collapse to show you all because I already showed you one time. We have the ventilation out 5 minutes. Then after, just tap it. To remove the air trap. And on this time, right, if you see your macarons is not expanding a lot, or if you undermix, or if you are undermix it, you can tap a little bit more to make sure it flat down a little bit to get the texture that we want. So now I'm going to show you to the macarons that we are baking earlier. And for this, right, I'm going to leave it for around 15 minutes to let it dry the surface. Then after that, I'm going to bake also to show you. So now I'm going to show you the baking side. Let's go. So after sometimes, as you can see, I pull out the ventilation. The reason like this is to let the excess steam goes out. If your oven don't have this function, what you can do, you can use your door, open a bit, close back to release the steam. But be very careful because usually the home oven, right, if your oven is not in a very good quality, I suggest you to skip all this. Okay, that's why in the video I didn't explain too much about this. One is because of time, and also second one, if I don't explain you with an interaction like this, right, you will have a lot of confusion. So if your oven, you understand a little bit, you can just open the door a little bit to release the steam. The reason we do like this is to make the macarons bake faster and dry faster. So now I'm going to continue. Just now I start with 7 minutes. Now I continue to bake another 5 minutes with bends out. When it's done, I'm going to overturn the tray and bake for 1 more minute. No. Has lights, torch light for this, so you can see this has a torch. So I show the macarons that we bake halfway. Because it's a bit dark, it's difficult to see. As you can see, okay. As you can see, we have two versions. It's a bit difficult to see, but one side is slightly bigger. The one side here, because it's the one we collected. The other side is slightly smaller. Is the one that we didn't collect much. Is the actual one. So you see the edges will look nicer from here. And later after you will see the difference. So we'll leave it. Okay, now we can discuss about the question you asked earlier. So we can check their question. Yeah, no problem.
Gel color can we add to the syrup?
Yes, gel color you can add to a syrup. This is what we use inside the class also.
So what will happen if we rest the shell for the longer time?
Okay, guys. If you sometimes over rest the shell for a long time, right? Especially for the Italian meringue macarons, you see when you bake, right? It raises on one side. It doesn't raise fully. So you will see you get a nice edges, but only from one side. Why? Because if you dry too long time, the surface form a crust too thick. Okay. So when you put inside the oven, right, you need to have a higher heat to push it up. But if you're using the same heat that what we show you, the heat is not strong enough to push it up, so they will only extend from one side. So the macaron is not even. Okay. So try to not over dry it.
Do we take the macaron with both heating rods on?
This is what I said earlier. The oven is very different. But if you are using with upper and lower rods, you're supposed to start both and try to put the tray in the middle.
Can we add cocoa powder to the
Italian meringue base?
Italian meringue?
Yes, you can. Just take out 10 to 15%. It depends. The more cocoa powder you put, right, it's more difficult to do. But the maximum is 15%. But I suggest you start with 8% to 10%. You replace the almond powder with the cocoa powder. 8 to 10. Do not put too much because cocoa powder are going to absorb the humidity much more than the almond powder. You will see after you put right if you put a lot, right, the meringue are going to collapse easily.
Okay. AL is asking which method is easier, Italian versus
If I do a production, I will choose Italian meringue. If I do a demo just for decoration, I use French because you don't need to cook. But then Italian is more stable. Okay. One moment, I show you turn the tray. So now one time I show you everything, it's easier for you to understand. So after 12 minutes, right, the macaron have a shape. You can see the difference. Okay. Now it looks like nice, but after we pull out, you'll see the difference. But now I'm going to overturn the tray to make it more even. For one more, another 2 minutes. Okay, so total we get 14 minutes. Because I have some macaron slightly bigger, right, so I make sure I bake around 14 minutes. If you have slightly smaller, you can bake maybe 13 minutes or 12 minutes, no problem. Okay, come back to the question. No more questions?
Go.
Okay, because this one still takes another 5 to 10 minutes.
So this one is like Italian and French recommend for the final product.
Later you will see the final product. Actually, if you look like this, it doesn't have huge difference on the outlook. You just for Italian, right? Because the meringue is more stable. If you see very close, very detailed, you will find the edges and the edges, the cracking is very fine. I would say it looks very fine, very even. For the French one, normally it's a bit more rough. So you say the outlook, I would say Italian looks slightly better. Okay. But if you take picture, you see look like this, I don't see there's a huge difference. You have to compare side to side. Yes.
One more.
We still have time, don't worry. A lot, then we go faster. Okay.
Okay, one more, one last. Is it okay to keep the fan on while making macarons or ventilation?
Yes, now I'm using a ventilation, I keep the fan on. Okay. You have to check your oven because my oven I cannot control the fan. I prefer to not using the fan, but you have to make sure your oven temperature is even. The heat translation is good. If your heat translation is not good, right, you have to on your fan. Okay. If your heat translation is good, you can avoid the fan, no problem. All right. Okay. When help me to take out the macaron, and you help me to put in the Italian meringue base inside. You take out already, right? Close the door. Ventilation in for 7 to 8 minutes. Why? More questions? I will show them the thing. Time's up. Ask only. I just answer. No worries. Any question you ask, any question I answer.
What other flavor can we use other than
You can use green tea, you can use cinnamon, you can use raspberry powder to get raspberry flavor. Everything you can use. Okay. Any flavor you think you can use it, then you can use it. So the flavor is not it's okay lah. Just to let you understand. Give me the wire rack if you the tray with hole also can. Yeah, the tray with hole. So guys, you can see the macarons. Now this is baked. Now you don't have too much difference on the outlook, but after cool down, then you will start to see. Normally I don't transfer the weight after I bake. Accidentally press someone is check the voice. Someone is speaking also. I still can hear. Hello. Now okay. So guys, I just explained you. Normally after I take out, right, I let it rest for 1 to 2 minutes. Then I transfer from the hot tray. I don't transfer right away. So right now, I transfer to the hot tray. And you will see the shell are going to spring a little bit down. You get a nice edges. Just now it's very big. Now you get a nice edges. But the one with overmix, right, you will see after it collects, right, the macarons are going to look like uncooked because more compact. We will see. So more questions? We have to wait for a few minutes. When you bake exactly the same way.
So when do we add color when we have to make the multi-color?
If you add a multi-color, right, I suggest you to use the powder form. So no liquid you are adding. So you can finish the mixture like I do the Italian one plain. Then on that time you can mix.
Do we always have to rotate the macarons pretty even for the whole complexion?
Probably don't need because my tray is big, so I have to rotate it so it's more even. For home one, usually you don't really need that. But you have to understand your oven. If your oven you know is quite even, you don't need to rotate. Later we show the box.
So when can we add colors to French macarons?
When can we add the color to French macarons? Okay, for French macarons, right, because we cannot evaporate the liquid, so I would suggest to use a powder form color. If you don't have, you use a gel color. You add in the end because you have no way to avoid to add in the liquid, so we have to trap the liquid inside. But for that, I suggest to do not put a lot of colors on your French because it won't be so stable. because we are going to add a lot of liquid inside. Okay.
Listen,
Yep.
is there any way to check if the macarons are done apart from timing?
Not really. You can check like this while we still hold it, open it up. Now it's a bit too late. It's already set. So you can check when you take it out. You see the structure inside is. Now it's hard to explain. It very depends on experience. Because if you touch it right, 11 minutes, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 14 minutes, 15 minutes to 20 minutes, right? It looks the same. And you touch it, it looks almost the same. You just have to make sure there's a shell. But the inner part, usually after you open it out, you will see it's a little bit sticky. Yeah, this. So you see this is the one, we mix it nicely. Okay, this is the one, we over mix it. So right now, you don't see a lot, but you start to see a little bit like wet. And if I try to take it out right, you see, it's more sticky. And you see the base. And if you are, and I'm not collapse it a lot. If you collapse it a bit more, right, you will get even worse. Maybe I can show them the inner part. Oh, so this one, you see, you get a structure. You have a small hole, it's okay. You can see. Just try also. You have a torchlight to show them. So now it's a bit dark. So you can see a structure inside. You can see you have a structure. Okay. But if this one right overmix, you will see basically you don't have much structure because they shrink. And you get a shell and the inside you see you have a hole, a line inside. And it's very thin. You see how much difference between the overmix and the nice one. So you see this one is thin, right? This one is thick. Okay, it's the same mixture. Just by mixing, you get a different way. Okay, because the Italian meringue, we have to wait for it. There's one trick, guys. If you get a very big hole in the center, very hollow, what you can do like this. When you want to sell, right, you can just press a bit. So by pressing like this, right, you will make sure it's not hollow, but you can put more filling inside. This is a lot of chefs are doing like this way to make sure that even though it's a little bit of hollow, right, you don't change the texture. Okay. But if you want to avoid it, you need to make sure the meringue you did is nicer, so you won't have a big hole in the center. So you get like this.
What is the shelf life of the shell without?
Well, you keep inside the freezer, inside the airtight box. You can keep up to a month, 2 months, no problem. But the only disadvantage is if you keep long time in the freezer, right, you feel the taste of the freezer. Okay, it's not fresh. Normally, I would say keep 2 weeks is a good system.
Is there a great taste?
Yeah, is there a
great taste difference? I think they are trying to say about when you compare French and Italian.
The taste different? No, not really. I don't see there's a huge difference between the Italian and French meringue on the taste. But for the texture, I would say Italian meringue French one are a little bit more stickier. Okay, Italian is more clean, but it depends. I don't say which one is better because it very depends. I like to eat a stickier one, but for Italian, it's more suitable for the production because when you do a 50 recipe, right, it's big. Italian meringue you won't collapse so easily, so you can do it for longer, so you don't collapse. But for French, if this recipe, right, you do it times 10, right? The first tray you do is nice. The last tray, right, normally not so nice. So in production, I use Italian. But by getting it more sticky, right, what you can do, the filling. You get the filling, you put inside, you keep inside overnight in the chiller. Next day it will be sticky also, so do not worry too much about that. What else?
I think I can show the board now.
Oh, okay, you show the board. So I explained a bit. For the egg white and sugar is to make a meringue. Icing sugar, almond powder, and cocoa powder. This one will blend together to make a fine powder. So after blend, right, we don't need to sieve because it's very fine. So we go for Italian. For Italian, it's almond powder and sugar. We blend into a powder. And if you want to have chocolate flavor or coffee flavor, you have to take out some part of almond powder and replace with coffee or chocolate powder. After the first egg white, we are going to mix into the powder to make a paste, which I showed you earlier. And bottom egg white, sugar, and water will make an Italian meringue. So sugar and water, right, have to cook to 120 degrees. This one very important.
For bulk production, is there any other way of using instead of holding?
But you cannot for Italian, right? But that is a bit trickier. Like you saw me earlier, I prepared 2 KitchenAid. Actually, I want to show you the Italian meringue macarons, right? Use mixer to mix, but because the amount I have is very small, so I cannot use it, and also it's difficult for you all to understand. But you can use the mixer to mix the paste. Okay. After you've done the paste, right, you do the Italian meringue. Once the meringue is done, you put half inside, mix well with low speed. Once you mix well, right, you put the remaining, use paddle to mix well with low speed again. But very tricky because if you over mix it, you are going to waste everything. By hand is easier to control. Okay, so you have to practice.
The ratio of icing sugar to almond powder in the French meringue is slightly higher. It's slightly higher. Why is that, chef?
But you can reduce it. But this French meringue recipe, right, is easier to do in the beginning because the sugar content is a bit higher, so it's easier to work. If you reduce the icing sugar, right, it will become slightly more difficult to work. Okay. But it works out. You can reduce the sweetness. It's by the way. No more. So we wait for the macaron comes out, then we can finish. And Terence, we show them closer. Guys, now because I try to, just now I should mix a little bit more. Now it's over mixed, but it's not a lot. So it looks like you have a nice macarons, but actually you are not, because you see the hole it's super hollow in the middle. You see. But if you mix more, if I mix more, right, sometimes because you show me the picture in the Facebook, right, sometimes you see like wet. It's wet on the middle. The one is you mix more than what I mix here. It's not possible for the when you bake, right, it's not possible to bake it nicely. So because they are too compact, so they look like wet or uncooked. Okay. Yep.
Is it possible to replace sugar with stevia? What should be the quantity involved?
Someone asking, is it possible to replace the sugar with stevia? For macarons, I haven't tried, so I cannot tell you. And I saw people try before, it doesn't work. Okay. So you might have to adjust with other gelling agent or other kind of powder to make it more stable. I don't try it before, so I cannot answer you.
Sometimes I get a lot of air bubble in the fine macaron. How can this be avoided?
Sometimes I get a lot of air bubble on the surface. If you get an air bubble on the surface, right, you just tap it. Like how I show you last, I tapped nicely, I remove the air bubble. Okay? No more?
No at the moment.
So we wait for 2 more minutes for the Italian meringue macarons to come out. 蛮小灯的 tray。
plan to show eggless macaron online?
No yet. But we will have it on the upper chef online. Chef Angelo are going to do the eggless macarons for the recipes in the future for vegan. So we will show. Okay. Maybe next time I can show also, but not this time because the time is short. Because I think let's finish this. We go step by step. So no question. So we wait for that. Thank you very much, guys. For macaron, it's not too complicated. There's only 3 points you have to take care. The first one is the meringue that you beat. Second one is the folding. You have to check the right texture. Like just now I show the texture. I show right. Sorry. Like just now I show the texture. That is should not be too liquid. Otherwise, your pie is going to extend like this. Okay. And the third one is the baking. Baking, you have to try because every oven is different. So you have to understand your oven. Only you can start. Usually for this size, we bake with 160 degrees. But if I'm baking with my oven 160 degrees, right, I have a chance to crack the macarons because it's a little bit too high, the heat. So 155 is suitable for me. So you have to try with your home oven.
What is the eggless substitute for this?
Normally, to substitute eggless with egg whites, right? Normally, people are using aquafaba or the chickpea water. Or another way is to use I would say chemical agent. It's like gel cream that you have to put some powder inside your liquid and blend together to make it more like a egg white. So all this is a gelling agent. Okay, but it's a little bit complicated because every brand is different and the amount is different.
Okay. With the macaron, which didn't turn right, which is it didn't come out well.
This one?
They can be used in the different way. Any ideas? The drink is both ways.
If it cannot do right, you dry it in the oven with 80 degrees. Next time you can use for cheesecake base. But the problem is it's going to be very sweet. You have to pair with other cookies to use.
Okay, one more. If you are baking in a rotary oven, how much should be the temperature?
Rotation oven?
Yeah, rotary oven.
Okay. But I would say 160 is good for the rotation oven if you have a big rotation oven. Because last time when I worked in the hotel, I always bake 160. But the tray, the more important is the tray. The tray has to be stable. You have one more tray? The one with hole. So you can see the Italian meringue base macarons.
Can we get a live demo on it?
I don't know. If you want to get a live demo, you have to subscribe longer time. Wow. No lah. For the live demo, you might have to wait sometimes because we are going to topic by topic. So haven't reached the vegan or eggless yet. So future we might show. Okay. So I'm gonna leave 1 to 2 minutes on the hot tray. Then I can throw on the wire rack or tray with hose to cool it down. So any other questions? If no, then we are going to stop by today. Okay. So guys, thank you very much for today. I hope you understand and enjoy the topic. All right. I see you all again. Bye.